His client, Pierre Fulton, was in the car on the day that Walter Scott was killed. And in this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down one-on-one with his attorney, Mark Peper, to discuss the judge's decision on Michael Slager's bond, Mother Emanuel, Unity, and much, much more. Mark, it's so good to see you again.
Quintin, always a pleasure, buddy.
Yes, sir.
Always a pleasure. Great to see you.
You too.
Things going good?
It's going great. As I
Good.
told you earlier, it's busy.
That's good.
Doing a lot of interviews.
That's good.
Love
Good
doing
problem
it.
to have.
Yes, sir.
Good.
You know, I want to begin with the obvious. As you know, the Charleston County Circuit Judge, Quintin said the following on yesterday. He said, quote, after careful consideration of all the evidence presented and the nature and the circumstances of the offense, the court finds that release of defendant would constitute an unreasonable danger to the community. Tell me, when you look back to the bail hearing to right now, tell me, when did you know that he would make that particular decision?
I'll be honest with you, Quintin, I was a little surprised. I thought that he would set a bond. Now, I thought the bond would be in the millions, one that probably he couldn't get released on, but I was a little surprised that he did not set a bond. It's a constitutional right. Everybody has a constitutional right to have a bond set, and the standard is that everybody is entitled to a personal recognizance bond, and then the burden shifts to the state to prove that releasing him on a PR bond would either cause the community to have some type of threat, or it would be an unreasonable risk of flight for that defendant to be released. And so everybody starts at a PR bond, and then it kind of goes up from there based on those factors. And I'm sure that's how Judge Newman did it.
Okay.
Apparently what he decided was that while he did not believe Officer Slager to be a flight risk, that his release would have some type of threat to the community, as he declared it.
Right.
He worded it very carefully, though, as I was looking at the order.
Okay.
Normally you're talking about the defendant himself being a threat to the community.
Right.
Okay. I think the way he worded it, he said that his release would constitute an unreasonable danger to the community. Okay. I read that as though if he were to be released, the community might have such an issue with that, that there would be some danger in just their response. I kind of tend to think that's it was a very crafty way of wording it that way. It makes me kind of read between the lines and think that maybe that's what he intended, which is certainly within his right.
Yeah.
It doesn't specify that the defendant is going to be a threat to the community. It just says that if the defendant's release would cause some type of danger to the community, that bond should not be set. And so that was the basis of his. He did not address any issue with risk of flight. I don't think there was any hesitation on his part to think that he would abscond or not show up for court. Anytime you have a lawyer, especially a very reputable lawyer, as I always tell my clients, Judge, you don't have to worry about anything because I'm always going to know where he is.
Right.
I'm going to make sure he's
Right.
going to come to court, so you don't have to worry about it. So I don't think there was any flight risk really taken into consideration. It was just weighing the circumstances based on the nature of the charges themselves compared to the community's reaction, and he felt as though that it would be an unreasonable danger to the community to release him, and so he's denied bond.
And
What that means, not to interrupt you, because I'm sure your next question is where do we go from here? Where he goes from here is he either has to wait 6 months in order to have that reconsidered by Judge Newman, or Andy could try to show a change of circumstances from Friday's order moving forward. And that could be poking holes in the state's case or some new information that comes up. Whichever happens first, whether there's a change of circumstances first or 6 month passes first, that would be his next shot at getting Judge Newman to release him on bond while his charges are pending.
in fact, Slager basically said that he wanted to go home and see his newborn kid.
Very reasonable request, and family ties to the community, that is something that the court would consider, and I think that was Andy's angle, is to make sure that he understood, Judge, if you were to release him on bond, he's not going anywhere. He's going to go straight home to see his newborn son.
In fact, let's stay on Andy Savage. He said the following quote, "We share Michael's disappointment in today's court decision, but remain firmly convinced that the following a review of all the evidence a jury of Michael's peers will find that he was free of any criminal intent in his actions on April 4th, 2015.
Andy's angle there is clearly he's shifting gears now to try to influence the public as to what testimony will show at trial. It seems to me, now he will do exactly what he's being paid to do.
Okay.
Make sure that his client's best interests are always represented, and it may be his client's best interest would be to go back in front of Judge Newman at some point down the road. That statement, though, tells me that this issue is a dead issue for now, and he's starting to prepare for trial. That's the way I read it. I tell you, the other thing I read, too, into that statement is that he's starting to shift gears a little bit and is hinting, at least from my perspective, that he's not so much going to try to convince the jury that no crime was committed, but he's going to try to convince the jury that there was no intent to murder Mr. Scott.
Okay.
Which tells me that he's probably decided that a good result would be a conviction on some type of manslaughter charge, some type of lesser included offense where intent is not a requirement or an element of the crime. As you know, he's charged with murder,
Right.
which means the unlawful killing of another with the intent to kill that person. That statement tells me that he's focusing on that word intent, and he's going to, his strategy at trial is going to be to convince the jury that there was no intent to specifically shoot and kill Mr. Scott. That's me being the defense lawyer,
Right.
Reading into Andy's thoughts, which is a dangerous thing to do because Andy is the smartest guy around.
That he is.
But I think everybody involved, Solicitor Wilson,
Right.
the victims' advocates,
Right.
North Charleston Police Department, Andy, everybody is doing their job extremely well.
Speaking of which, the family actually put out a statement. They basically said, quote, "It isn't cause for celebration. There are no winners or losers when one man has lost his life at the hands of another. We trust in God and our prayers that something like this never happens again to any family, anywhere." He basically said that there are no winners or losers in this case. So when you look back at the bond hearing to right now again, what worked and what didn't?
Well, I think the family's sentiment, because it's my understanding that they expressed that same sentiment on Friday before Judge Newman,
Right.
and I think that makes a difference. He's got to weigh the impact on the victim's family if Slager to be released, and they took the high road, just as my client, Pierre Fulton, told me the same thing, is that he's not celebrating by any means. It can't undo what's been done, but he was glad, just as though Mr. Scott's family was, that at least Slager would remain behind bars. So I think that Solicitor Wilson did a good job of explaining to the judge that these were aggravated circumstances and that the nature of the crime itself is enough to cause the judge to hesitate and really consider the impact of releasing him. That certainly worked. She was certainly able to convince him that his release would cause some type of unrest in the community and be a danger to the community. That clearly worked. I think Andy, his focus on the fact that there's no risk of him absconding or any type of flight risk,
Right.
I think that worked as well. Everything Andy does is with a purpose, and I firmly believe that he showed a few cards on purpose regarding the investigation, or in his words, the lack thereof, where SLED missed X, Y, and Z, and he's now asking that an independent investigation be done. You can kind of see where he's shifting his focus, and I think that went a long way, not necessarily towards the judge's decision on bond, but I think what he was able to reveal on Friday in open court gives us a glimpse into what we can expect down the road. And I think I would never second guess Mr. Savage. He knows what he's doing. He's been doing it a long time, and I can see the writing on the wall where he's going with this, and I wholeheartedly agree that what he's doing is in the best interest of his client. So I think everybody to date has been very professional. My understanding is that the judge handled the matter very well on Friday. He kept control of everybody in the courtroom and ran a very tight ship. So I think Charleston should be proud of the way that this entire ordeal has been handled. The Scott family has great representation. They've done everything that they've been asked to do. They have shown a lot of patience, and we all should be proud of the way that this matter, similar to the Mother Emanuel matter, has been handled as a community. I think I'm very proud to be a Charlestonian these days.
And speaking of which, because you talked about Pierre, and he says there's no time for celebration either, I'm wondering where is he emotionally?
He really, he's doing well, all things considered. We've got him some treatment, and he likes to talk to people that he trusts and confides in, because this was a huge ordeal for him. He's got a great family that he enjoys spending time with, and he loves his job. As you know, he and Walter work together, and he loves going there. I asked him the other day, I said, well, does it bother you at all that Walter's not there? And he said, well, Pep, sure, it bothers me, but, you know, this is where we hung out, and we have great memories here, and so he likes being there, so he's doing well. I'm very, very proud of Pierre. He's a good kid. He really, really is a good kid.
And speaking of emotions, as you know, June 17th changed our lives forever. Take me back down to that day. I'm wondering, how did your day start and how did it end?
You know, it's funny, I was in bed. I went to bed early. We have a little baby at the house, and so I try to get my sleep when I can, and I was doing some work and reading, and all of a sudden I got some, and so I kind of started following it, and I really didn't understand the gravity of the situation until the next morning when I woke up, and just could not believe what I'd read, and what, of course, it was 24-hour news coverage there, and it really, I canceled all my meetings, and I really drove down there and just to see what was going on.
I live nearby.
Well, you know, I mean, the place was an absolute zoo. And this is one thing that I'll tell my children, and everybody's going to always remember those watershed moments. Hurricane Hugo, 9/11, Mother Emanuel, those types of things. I was so proud of the way that this community handled that. It just could not have gone any better. Given the gravity of the situation, when you look around our country and see how others have handled these types of situations, it was night and day.
There you go.
And it just goes to show the strength and the faith that these victims' families had, and the closeness of our community. And as I said earlier, if you weren't proud to be a Charlestonian before this year, 2015 has really solidified the fact that this is the best place to live in the world. I just couldn't be more proud of how my fellow citizens have handled things over the last 6 or 8 months. It's been really neat to sit back and watch.
You're right about that.
Yeah.
Well, Mark Peper, it's always good talking to you.
Quintin's always a pleasure. You know where I am. You know where to find me. Love you, buddy. Real proud of you. Keep up the great work.
I will.